The night air hung heavy over the city, thick with secrets. Inside the sprawling Moretti mansion, chandeliers glowed like captive stars, casting soft golden light across the polished floors. It was a house built on power, fear, and silence. Adrian Moretti stood by the tall window in his office, looking down at the driveway where expensive cars came and went. Deals were being made, allegiances formed, enemies watched from the shadows. Love, to him, was a weakness, a distraction he could not afford. He believed in loyalty, control, strategy, not love. His father had fallen in love once, and it nearly destroyed their entire empire. Adrian had learned early, feelings got people killed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Elena Rivera clutched a crumpled letter in her trembling hands. Final notice. Debt must be cleared within 7 days. Ibrahim, her chest tightened. Her father's medical bills had drowned them. The loan sharks had come. And now, with her father gone, all that remained was the debt. Hers to pay. She worked 2 jobs, barely eating, sleeping on buses between shifts. But no matter how much she earned, it was never enough. The last job agency she visited that day wasn't promising. The woman behind the desk looked her up and down, plain clothes, tired face, and sighed. "There's one option," the woman finally said. "Live in Maid, high salary. But it's not a normal house." Zebra, Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's the Moretti estate," the woman whispered. "They don't usually hire outsiders. But someone pulled out last minute. You'll need to follow strict rules. No questions, no wandering, no mistakes." Elena hesitated. She'd heard whispers of the Morettis, Mafia, power, danger. But she had no choice. "I'll take it," she said. The gates of the Moretti mansion were like black iron teeth, closing behind her as the car drove in. Her stomach knotted tighter with every step. Inside, the house was immaculate. Marble floors, tall ceilings, security cameras everywhere. A stern housekeeper named Maria met her at the entrance. "You will clean the guest wing, the lower halls, and the gardens," Maria said crisply. "Never enter the west wing. Never speak to the boss unless spoken to." "Understood?" Ibrahim, Elena nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." "Ibrahim, you're here to work off debt?" Maria asked bluntly. Elena flinched. "Yes. Ibrahim work hard. No mistakes. He doesn't forgive mistakes." Her first few days passed in a blur of scrubbing floors and polishing surfaces until her hands ached. She kept her head down. She didn't speak. She followed every rule. But every night she felt his presence. The boss. She'd catch glimpses of him, tall, sharply dressed, eyes like midnight steel, passing through corridors with his men. No one dared speak when he was near. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. One evening, as she carried a basket of fresh sheets down the hallway, she turned a corner too fast and collided straight into someone. The basket toppled. Sheets flew everywhere. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to pick them up. Then she looked up and froze. It was him. Adrian Moretti. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Broad shoulders beneath a tailored black suit, dark hair slightly tousled, and those eyes, cold, unreadable. She scrambled to collect the sheets, but his voice cut through the air like a blade. "What's your name?" "Ibrahim," she whispered. He studied her a moment, not lustfully, not kindly, just assessing. Then he turned away. "Watch where you're going," he said, and walked off, his men following like shadows. Her heart hammered against her ribs long after he was gone. Days turned into weeks. She became a silent part of the mansion, but Adrian noticed her more than he admitted. She was different from the others, quiet, careful. Her eyes held sadness, not ambition. She didn't flirt like the others did when he passed. She didn't stare, she just worked. One late night, Adrian was returning from a meeting when he saw her in the garden. Everyone else was asleep. She was on her knees, scrubbing a marble fountain, hair falling loose from her bun, hands raw and red. Something about that image, fragile but determined, made him stop. "Why are you still working?" he asked suddenly. She startled, spinning around. I had some tasks left, sir." Ibrahim frowned. "It's past midnight. I'm behind schedule," she said quickly. Her voice was soft, but her eyes, they were steady. He stepped closer. She frayed to meet his. he asked quietly. She froze. Pardon? How much do you owe? His tone was calm but firm. She hesitated, enough to lose everything. Abruptly he studied her for a long time. Then without another word he walked away, leaving her confused, heart racing. Over the following weeks their paths crossed more often, small encounters in hallways, quiet glances during late nights. Adrian found himself noticing ridiculous details. The way she hummed softly when cleaning, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. He caught himself thinking about her when he shouldn't. He didn't believe in love. But something was stirring. Elena tried to ignore it. He was her boss, a dangerous man, and she was just a maid working off her father's mistakes. But every time their eyes met, something unspoken lingered in the air. One evening a thunderstorm raged outside. Most of the staff had gone to their quarters. Elena was collecting laundry near the west wing when she overheard voices through a slightly open door. "She's not just a maid," one of Adrian's lieutenants said. "We ran her background. Her father owed money to us through the D'Amatos. She's working it off. She's harmless," Adrian replied. "Harmless can be dangerous if someone uses her," the man warned. "We should keep an eye on her." Her chest tightened. They knew everything. She backed away quietly, but the door creaked. Adrian's eyes snapped toward the sound. "Elena?" he called out. She froze. He stepped into the hallway, rainlight casting shadows across his face. "Were you listening?" No, I was just," she stammered. His gaze was sharp but not cruel. "Go to your room," he said finally. "Now." She ran, heart pounding. But later that night, she sat by the small window in her quarters, staring out at the storm. For the first time she realized she wasn't invisible here. She was part of something far bigger than she'd planned, and in the center of it was him. Adrian poured himself a glass of whiskey that night, replaying the hallway encounter in his head. She'd looked terrified. Not because he caught her, but because she didn't know how to lie. He told himself to ignore it, to stay detached. She was just a maid. But deep down, something in him already knew. This girl was about to unravel everything he believed about love, loyalty, and control. The days grew colder, but inside the Moretti mansion, a different kind of heat was quietly building. Elena tried to maintain her usual rhythm, polishing floors, arranging flowers, washing endless dishes, but it was getting harder to ignore the way her world was slowly shifting. Every glance toward Adrian felt heavier. Every word exchanged lingered long after. She told herself to keep her distance. He's the boss. I'm the help. But hearts rarely follow logic. One morning, Maria handed Elena a new schedule. "You're assigned to the West Wing this week," Maria said curtly. "Special permission from the boss." Elena froze. "The West Wing? But Maria's eyes narrowed. "Don't question, just follow orders. And don't touch anything personal." The West Wing was where Adrian lived, his private quarters, office, and library. No one went there except trusted staff. For Elena to be allowed in, it was both an honor and a risk. Her hands trembled slightly as she carried cleaning supplies down the long, silent hallway of the West Wing. The air there felt different, heavier, quieter, almost sacred. Paintings of Adrian's ancestors stared down at her as if judging her every step. She entered the library first. It was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of old books, a grand piano near the window, the faint scent of leather and whiskey lingering in the air. As she dusted the shelves, her fingers brushed against a small music box tucked behind some books. She lifted it carefully and opened it. A soft, melancholic melody filled the room. She closed her eyes for a moment. It reminded her of her father, how he'd hum old songs while fixing things around the house. For a moment, the mansion didn't feel like a cage. It felt human. "What are you doing?" She spun around, the music box still open in her hands. Adrian stood at the doorway, arms crossed, watching her. I was just cleaning," she stammered. "I found this Berthy." He stepped closer, gaze locked on hers. "That music box belonged to my mother." Her eyes widened. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to..." her, but to her surprise, his voice softened. "It's fine." He took the box gently from her hands, his fingers briefly brushing hers. Electricity shot up her arm. He turned the box over in his hands, eyes distant. "She used to play this at night," he said quietly. before everything changed. Ibrahim, Elena didn't dare speak. She'd never seen this side of him before, not the calculating boss, but a son remembering a mother. She died when I was 13, he added after a moment, setting the box back. After that, I stopped believing in fairy tales. Ibrahim. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry, she whispered. He looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Why are you apologizing for something you didn't do? I just know what it's like to lose someone, she said softly. It changes everything. For the first time, Adrian didn't see a maid standing before him. He saw someone who understood pain, not out of pity but from living it. Later that day, Elena was sent to deliver a folder to Adrian's office. When she entered, she found him on the phone, his voice sharp, dangerous. If they cross that line again, I'll burn their entire operation to the ground, he said coldly. No warnings. She froze by the door. He turned, saw her, and ended the call abruptly. Come in, he said. She approached slowly, holding out the folder. This is from Maria. He took it, then noticed her lingering near the bookshelf. You're curious, he said, almost amused. She blushed. I've never seen so many books. Most people around here can't read beyond contracts and gun manuals, he said dryly. She hesitated, then admitted, I love books. They were my escape growing up. He raised a brow. Escape from what? She bit her lip. Something about her honesty disarmed him. He gestured toward a chair. Sit. Her eyes widened. Sir, It's not a request, he said calmly. Heart pounding, she sat on the edge of the leather chair as he leaned against the desk, studying her. You don't belong here, he said finally. She stiffened. I know I'm just a maid, that's not what I meant, he interrupted. You don't belong in a world in debts. She looked down. I didn't choose this, no, he said softly. But the world doesn't always give choices. The silence between them was charged, not just with tension, but with something fragile and unspoken. She stood up quickly. I should get back to work. As she hurried out, Adrian watched her go, his mind a battlefield he couldn't control. That night, trouble arrived. A black SUV pulled up to the gates unannounced. Maria rushed through the halls. Adrian! It's the D'Amatos, they're demanding a meeting. The D'Amatos were rivals. Unpredictable and dangerous. Adrian met them in the grand hall, flanked by his men. Elena, hiding behind a pillar, watched nervously. Adrian, said Marco D'Amato with a smirk. You've been interfering in our business. I'm keeping my city clean, Adrian replied coolly. Marco leaned closer. Careful. One misstep, and even your precious mansion won't protect you. Their exchange was civil on the surface but dripping with threats. As they left, Marco's eyes landed on Elena briefly. He smiled. A chilling, wolfish smile. New staff? Elena froze. Adrian stepped slightly in front of her. She's not your concern. Marco chuckled. Everything in this city is my concern. After they left, Adrian turned to her. Stay away from them, if they ever speak. Her heart raced. Why would they care about me? Because they use people, he said darkly. And you're vulnerable. The following week was tense. Adrian increased security. Elena noticed more armed men patrolling the estate. She tried to keep her head down, but she couldn't ignore the growing storm around them. One evening, as she returned to her room, she found a small envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single note. Pretty little maids shouldn't wander where wolves hunt. Her blood ran cold. She ran to Adrian's office, knocking frantically. What happened? He demanded as she showed him the note. His eyes hardened like steel. They're trying to scare you. Why me? She whispered. Because they saw me protect you, he said. And now they think you're my weakness. Her breath caught. Am I? He stared at her for a long moment. Go to your room. Lock the door. She obeyed, but sleep didn't come easily that night. For the first time, she realized her presence in the mansion wasn't just about cleaning floors. She was now a piece on a dangerous chessboard. Days later, An unexpected storm broke the fragile calm. Elena was walking through the back garden when two masked men grabbed her. She struggled, screaming, but a hand covered her mouth. They dragged her toward the fence, a kidnapping attempt. Suddenly, gunshots cracked through the air. Adrian's men swarmed in. One of the attackers fled, the other was pinned to the ground. Adrian appeared seconds later, furious, gun in hand. When he saw Elena on the ground, shaken but alive, something inside him snapped. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She shook her head, tears streaming. "They tried to—" "Ibrich, I know," he said, jaw clenched. He stood, grabbed the captured man by the collar, and growled, "Who sent you?" The man spat blood. "D'Amato send their regards." Adrian's face turned to ice. He ordered his men to take the attacker away. Then he turned back to Elena, his hand surprisingly gentle as he helped her up. "You're safe now," he said quietly. She looked at him through tears. "Why are you protecting me? I'm just—" "You're not just anything," he interrupted, voice low. "Maid." Her heart stopped for a beat. His words hung in the air like a confession neither of them were ready to fully admit. That night, Adrian stationed guards outside her door. He couldn't explain to his men, or to himself, why her safety mattered so much. All he knew was that if anything happened to her, something inside him would shatter. Elena, lying in bed, touched the spot on her arm where his hand had steadied her. She shouldn't feel this way. It was dangerous, forbidden. But love doesn't ask for permission. And somewhere deep down, Adrian Moretti, the man who didn't believe in love, had already started to fall. The attack changed everything. Elena wasn't just another maid anymore, not to Adrian and not to his enemies. Her quiet existence had been pulled into a dangerous world she never asked to join. But the nights after the kidnapping attempt were different. The mansion no longer felt like a workplace, it felt like a fortress. Guards roamed the halls. Every creak made her heart race. And Adrian? He was everywhere. She'd catch glimpses of him on balconies late at night, staring into the distance with a cigarette between his fingers. His presence was intense, magnetic, and terrifying all at once. One cold morning, Maria entered Elena's room. "Get dressed nicely," she said briskly. "The boss wants you to accompany him into the city." Elena blinked. "Me? Why?" Maria shrugged. "He's waiting by the car." Confused and nervous, Elena changed into the best clothes she had, a simple white blouse and black skirt, and hurried outside. Adrian stood beside a sleek black car, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He didn't smile, but his gaze lingered on her longer than usual. "Get in," he said simply. She slid into the passenger seat, unsure what to say. The car started moving through the city streets, sleek and silent. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. "I have a meeting," he said, "and I don't trust leaving you behind right now." Her stomach tightened. "Because of them?" He nodded. "The D'Amatos aren't done, and I'm not taking chances." For a moment, silence filled the car, but it wasn't uncomfortable. She stole glances at him as he drove. His hands gripped the wheel with calm authority. There was something beautiful about the way he controlled everything around him. Yet inside, she sensed a storm. The meeting took place in a high-rise building downtown. While Adrian met with business associates in a glass-walled office, Elena sat in the lobby with a cup of coffee. She watched people pass by, men in suits, women in heels, and felt like a stranger in a world too big for her. Then she saw him through the glass, Adrian, standing with his back to her, surrounded by powerful men. He wasn't just a boss, he was a king in his own kingdom. And yet, when his eyes found hers through the glass for a brief second, he softened. That look stayed with her all day, after the meeting instead, heading back to the mansion. Adrian surprised her. "Come with me," he said, parking the car in front of a quiet park near the waterfront. The air was crisp, the trees were shedding the last of their autumn leaves. They walked in silence for a while. Elena wrapped her arms around herself for warmth. Adrian noticed and shrugged off his coat, draping it over her shoulders without a word. Her breath caught. "You didn't have to—" I did," he replied. They reached a bench overlooking the water. For once, Adrian wasn't surrounded by guards, power, or walls. It was just them. "You grew up here?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Born and raised. My father built the empire. I inherited it." Abrika, did you ever want something else? He gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Wanting something doesn't change destiny. She looked at him, studying the way his eyes held years of pain and weight. That sounds lonely. Abrika, it is, he admitted. Then, almost reluctantly, what about you? What did you want before all this? Buri, she hesitated. A small bakery. Nothing fancy, just mine. I love baking. Buri, he glanced at her. A bakery? Hey, Buri, she smiled, shy but genuine. Yeah, warm bread, fresh pastries, a place where people feel safe. For a moment, he imagined it. Her behind a counter, flour on her hands, sunlight pouring through a window. It was a picture so different from his world, and yet it felt right. You don't belong in my world, he said quietly. She looked down. Maybe, but right now, I don't have a choice. Abura, that simple truth hit him harder than he expected. Back at the mansion, tension grew. D'Amato's men were spotted near the property. Adrian held meeting after meeting with his lieutenants. Elena could feel the storm brewing, and she hated that she was part of it. But amidst the chaos, small moments between them began to bloom. She'd bring him coffee late at night in his office. He'd glance up from his papers, murmur thank you, and their eyes would hold for just a little too long. She'd pass him in the hallway, and his hand would brush against hers. Not by accident anymore. It wasn't spoken, but it was there. A spark neither could ignore. One night she entered the library to return a book. Adrian was there, sitting in the dim light, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted and devastatingly handsome. I didn't know anyone else came here at this hour, he said without looking up. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. The house feels different at night. Briefly, he gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She hesitated, then obeyed. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional rustle of pages. Then out of nowhere, he asked, Do you trust me? Brahi, her breath caught. Why? Because you're in the middle of something dangerous, he said, and trust is the only thing that'll keep you alive. She met his gaze. It wasn't just a question about safety. It was deeper. Finally, she whispered, Yes, I do. Something in his expression shifted, like a wall cracking just a little. A few days later, the danger reached a boiling point. One of Adrian's men rushed into his office. Boss, D'Amato's crew hit one of our warehouses. Adrian stood instantly, fury in his eyes. Get the cars ready. Helena was in the hallway when he emerged, grabbing his jacket. Adrian, wait. Abrs isn't your concern, he snapped. It is if you get hurt, she blurted out. He stopped, turned. Their eyes locked. She regretted the words the second they left her mouth, but it was too late. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, softer, I won't. Abrika, hours later, gunshots echoed through the night at the docks. Adrian's men clashed with D'Amato's crew in a brutal standoff. Adrian emerged victorious, but when he returned, there was blood on his arm. Elena rushed to him the moment he entered. You're hurt! Abra, it's nothing, he muttered. It's not nothing, she said, pulling him into a chair. She grabbed the first aid kit, her hands trembling as she cleaned the wound. He watched her, the way her brows furrowed in concentration, the way she whispered under her breath. No one had touched him this gently in years. Why do you care so much? He asked suddenly. She looked up. Because you mattered to me. This silence after those words was heavy. His heart, long sealed shut, thudded louder than gunfire. He reached out, fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. Don't, he whispered. Don't make me feel something I swore I never would. Tibet his gaze steadily. Maybe it's already too late. In the days that followed, something between them shifted permanently. He started seeking her presence, small excuses to see her, to hear her voice. She began to understand the man beneath the power, someone scarred, lonely, desperate to believe in something pure again. And late one night, in the soft glow of the library, as rain fell outside, Adrian whispered the words he never thought he'd say. Buri, you make me want to believe. Ibrahim, Elena's heart raced. She didn't answer. She simply leaned his shoulder. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't a promise, but it was real. Winter arrived like a whisper that turned into a storm. The mansion felt quieter, colder, but But inside, something warm had begun to grow. Adrian and Elena's bond was no longer something that could be ignored. The looks, the late-night talks, the moments of unexpected closeness, it was all there. And everyone in the house could feel it. Maria noticed first. She saw the way Adrian's eyes softened when Elena walked into a room. She noticed how Elena's steps changed, lighter, hesitant but full of something she couldn't hide. "This is dangerous," Maria warned her one evening in the kitchen. Elena froze while washing dishes. "What is?" "Whatever is happening between you and him." Maria crossed her arms. "This house doesn't forgive love easily, and neither does this world." Elena swallowed hard. She knew Maria wasn't wrong. Adrian wasn't just a man. He was a mafia boss. And she? She was a maid working off a debt she didn't even create. But her heart had stopped caring about the logic of it weeks ago. One night the storm outside grew wild. Rain pounded against the windows. Thunder echoed through the halls. Elena was in her small room, hugging her knees, trying to ignore the distant sounds of Adrian's men arguing downstairs. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Adrian standing there, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair slightly damp from the rain, eyes intense. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. She nodded, stepping aside. He entered the small, humble room. It looked nothing like the luxury he lived in. A narrow bed, one lamp, a few personal things neatly arranged. "It's warmer in here than in the West Wing," he muttered, looking around. "It's tiny," she said shyly. "It's real," he replied. "That's rare in my world." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. But there was something unguarded about him. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "You look tired." He exhaled. "I am. It's been years since I felt this kind of exhaustion. Not from business. From feeling too much." Her heart skipped. "Because of me?" He looked straight at her. "Yes." Her breath caught. He stepped closer, slowly, like someone approaching a truth he wasn't ready to face. "You've done something I didn't think was possible," he said. "You've made me question everything." She whispered. "I didn't mean to." I know." His voice softened. "That's why it happened." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room. For a second they stood so close she could hear his heart beat. "Elena," he murmured, almost to himself. "I can't protect you from this world forever. It will hurt you." She met his eyes. "Then let me choose. I don't want to run away anymore." Something in him cracked. A wall built over years, broken by a single sentence. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered shut at his touch. The air between them grew heavy, warm, alive. "I've spent my whole life controlling everything," he whispered. "But when I'm near you, I don't want control." Her pulse raced. His hand lingered her cheek, his thumb grazing her skin like a secret. "Then don't," she whispered back. The moment stretched, full of heat and unspoken promises. Then suddenly, bang! The front gates. A commotion erupted downstairs. Adrian pulled away instantly, every inch of him snapping back into the boss. "Stay here," he ordered, voice sharp. She grabbed his hand. "Be careful." He gave her a look, one that said, "I will, for you," before vanishing down the hall. Chaos consumed the mansion. D'Amato's men had made a bold move, sending armed intruders through the storm. Gunfire echoed in the night. Adrian's men took positions, returning fire. Adrian moved like a shadow, calm, ruthless, precise. Elena crouched in her room, hands over her ears, terrified. But her fear wasn't for herself. It was for him. Minutes felt like hours. Then, silence. A knock at her door made her jump. "Elena, it's me." She opened it to find Adrian, rain-soaked, breathing heavily but alive. Blood streaked his arm again, but his eyes found hers immediately, as if making sure she was safe came before anything else. "You're bleeding again," she whispered. "I told you," he said, a small, tired smile breaking through. "I'm hard to kill." She pulled him inside, grabbed the first aid kit. This time, there was no hesitation. She cleaned the wound with practiced hands while he watched her silently, You shouldn't have been alone, he finally said. Next time you stay near me. Ibra's heart skipped. Next time? He held her gaze. Because this isn't over. Ibra. In the following days, the mansion turned into a war room. Adrian doubled security, planned counter-moves, and made it clear to the D'Amatos he wouldn't bow. But in between the danger, moments with Elena kept slipping through the cracks. She'd find him late at night on the balcony, staring at the city lights. She'd bring him tea, and they'd talk about everything that wasn't blood or power. Books, music, childhood dreams. Sometimes silence between them said more than words ever could. One night, as she handed him a cup, he surprised her. "Sit with me," he said softly. She did. The city stretched before them, glowing under the moonlight. "I used to think love was weakness," he admitted, "a distraction, something that gets you killed." "Ibrahim now?" she asked. "Now I think it's the only thing keeping me human." Pari. Her chest tightened. She didn't dare speak. He turned to her, eyes raw, unguarded. "Elena, you make me want something I never thought I deserved." Brahe, her fingers brushed his. Slowly their hands intertwined. In that moment, they weren't Mafia boss and Maid. They were just two people, caught in a storm, holding on to the only thing that felt real. But their world wasn't built for peace. The next morning, Marco D'Amato sent a message, a video. One of Adrian's warehouses, in flames, and a voice, "Abraham, you can't protect everyone you care about. Not forever." Adrian's jaw tightened as he watched. Elena stood behind him, heart pounding. She understood now. She wasn't just part of his life. She was part of his war. "Stay close to me," he said. "From now on, wherever I go, you go." "Ibra," she hesitated. "Adrian, that's dangerous." "Brikiso is being near me," he interrupted. "But I'm done pretending you're not." That night she found him in the library again. He looked tired, but when she entered, something in him relaxed. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. He set down his glass, stood, and walked toward her. His presence filled the room, steady and powerful. But when he stopped in front of her, his voice softened. "I keep telling myself to keep my distance," he said. "And every time, I fail." "Ibri," she whispered, "then stop fighting it." He stared at her for a long moment, then closed the distance between them. His hands cupped her face gently, his forehead resting against hers. The world outside was chaos, but here, in this quiet room, there was only them. And for the first time, Adrian let himself feel. Days passed, but the memory of that night stayed with both of them. They weren't lovers, not yet. But something deeper had taken root, something that couldn't be undone. Adrian started to see a future he never believed in. Elena started to believe she deserved something more than survival. And as war loomed closer, so did their hearts. And in their world, that meant everything. The rain was heavy that night. It tapped against the mansion windows like a restless heartbeat. Inside, the air felt charged, quiet but trembling with something unspoken. Elena stood in the kitchen long after everyone had gone to bed. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her shift ended hours ago, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying his voice, his stare, his unexpected kindness. Luca, the man who terrified everyone. The man who once said, "Love is a weakness." The man whose eyes softened only when they found her. She wrapped her arms around herself, rubbing the chill away. She didn't hear him enter. Only when his deep voice filled the room did her breath catch. "Why are you still awake, Elena?" She turned quickly. He stood by the doorway. No suit jacket, shirt unbuttoned at the top, sleeves rolled up. He looked different, less like the untouchable Mafia boss, more like a man. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered. He stepped closer. His presence was magnetic. The air seemed to bend around him, drawing her in whether she liked it or not. "Neither could I," he said softly. She blinked. You seem like someone who can sleep through a war." Aburi let out a quiet laugh, rare, warm, almost boyish. "Not tonight." A beat of silence, only the rain between them, their eyes locked. And suddenly it wasn't just a kitchen at midnight. It was a moment suspended in time. They ended up sitting at the long marble counter. A single dim light above cast a soft glow over their faces. She made tea. He accepted surprisingly. "You always make tea when you can't sleep?" he asked. "It reminds me of home," she said. even if that home doesn't exist anymore. He watched her carefully. Tell me, Sieber. She hesitated. No one had asked her that in years. But something in his eyes, steady, almost gentle, made the walls she'd built crumble a little. I grew up in a small town. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father left before I could remember his face. We were happy, until debt swallowed everything. I came here to fix what he broke. Brie. Her voice cracked. She looked away quickly, embarrassed. But Luca didn't mock. He didn't interrupt, he simply listened. And now you work for a man like me, he murmured. She nodded slowly. I didn't have a choice. Bru, no, he said, gaze darkening. You did. You chose to fight. That matters. Brie. She stared at him. No one had ever framed it like that before. Hours passed without them noticing. Stories, quiet confessions, rare laughter. The world outside blurred into rain and night. In here, something fragile and real took root. When the clock struck 3, Elena stood to leave. I should go. If Mrs. Bianchi sees me here at this hour, she'll think I've lost my mind. Ibrahim Luca stood too. Elena. Ibrahim, she turned. For a moment he didn't speak. His jaw tensed, like he was fighting himself. Then softly, dangerously softly, he said, Ibrahim, make this place feel less empty. Ibrahim. Her breath caught. The words hit somewhere deep, where she kept the things she didn't want to feel. She didn't know what to say. So she whispered, almost trembling, Berker, good night, Luca. Ibrahim. He watched her walk away, and for the first time in years, the Mafia boss didn't feel like a king on a throne. He felt like a man, standing in a quiet kitchen, watching the only light in his darkness disappear up the stairs. The tension grows, Brie. The following days were different, subtle glances in the hallway. Shared silence that spoke louder than words. Every interaction carried weight now, soft, dangerous weight. She noticed how his guards stepped aside when she passed, how the staff whispered when he entered a room and looked for her first. She tried to ignore it, but her heart betrayed her. At night, she replayed that kitchen moment over and over. His voice, his eyes, that confession. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. He wasn't supposed to care. One afternoon, as she dusted the grand staircase, she heard raised voices in his office. Men, anger, trouble. She tried to walk away, but the door burst open. Luca emerged, jaw tight, fury in his stride. Their eyes met mid-hall, and even through his storm he stopped. Elena, he said, a grounding force in the chaos, come here. Basen. Her heart pounded. She obeyed. Closed doors. His voice softened again. I didn't want you to see that. Berhe, see what? She whispered. My world. It's not made for people like you. And yet, she said bravely, I'm standing here. Ibrahim, he stared at her. For a long moment, no Mafia, no power, just him. Just her. And the tension that neither could deny anymore. The night of the gala Ibra, when the annual Mafia gala arrived, everything shifted again. It was a night of power, politics, and danger dressed in tuxedos. Luca needed to make a statement. He ordered her to help prepare. She thought she'd just be serving drinks, but hours before the event, a knock came on her door. It was a tailor, and a dress, a breathtaking black gown. Mr. Luca said you're to wear this, the woman explained. Elena's hands trembled as she touched the fabric. She'd never worn anything like it. When she finally stepped into the ballroom that night, heads turned. Not just because she looked stunning, but because she was by his side. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is she? Ibrahim, a maid? Why is he looking at her like that? Ibrahim Luca ignored them all. His hand rested at the small of her back, protective, claiming, almost tender. Stay close to me tonight, he whispered in her ear. Her heart fluttered wildly. I don't belong here. You do, he said, eyes dark and sure. You belong right next to me, Faber. As the night went on, danger lingered behind smiles. Allies and enemies mingled in silk and champagne. Elena tried to keep up, but the world felt overwhelming. At one point, a rival boss approached, slick suit, sharp smile. Luca, he drawled, eyes sliding to Elena. New staff? Luca's expression hardened. He moved slightly closer to her. She's not staff, she's with me. Abraham chuckled. With you? The Luca who swore love was a weakness? Sibri, Luca's jaw flexed. Maybe weakness is exactly what I need. For a brief, Elena's breath caught. Her cheeks burned. The rival smirked and walked away. She looked up at Luca, stunned. Did you mean that? He leaned in closer, his voice low. Maybe I did. Ibri. Their eyes locked under the golden lights. The music swelled. And for a heartbeat, the world disappeared. Unspoken you that night ended with them outside on the balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly below. The cool air wrapped around them. She stood near the railing, gown flowing, hair catching the breeze. He approached slowly like he didn't want to break the spell. Elena, he said, voice softer than she'd ever heard. She turned. Yes? Ibri. I don't know what this is, he confessed. I just know. When you're near, everything feels different. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he'd hear it. Luca. Ibri. He stepped closer, their faces inches apart. His hand rose, hesitant, then brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Tell me to stop, he whispered. She didn't. The space between them vanished. And though no words were spoken, everything changed in that moment, the night the Mafia boss who didn't believe in love finally let himself feel. The night after the gala, the mansion didn't feel the same. It wasn't just a building anymore. It was a storm waiting to break. Elena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's face on that balcony, his hand brushing her hair. The way his voice trembled when he said he didn't know what this was. She sat by the small window in her room, knees pulled close, staring at the moon. Her heart ached with something beautiful and terrifying. This can't be real, she whispered to herself. People like him don't love people like me. Abraha, but somewhere deep inside, she hoped. Downstairs, Luca stood alone in his office. The room was dark except for the faint city glow. A glass of whiskey sat untouched on his desk. He stared at the security footage of the gala. Not the enemies, not the deals. Her. Every second she smiled, he caught himself watching. Every step she took, his chest tightened. What are you doing to me, Elena? He muttered. He'd lived his life with rules. Power, control, no weakness. Love was something he locked away long ago. But now her laugh echoed in his head louder than gunfire. The threat birth the peace shattered the next morning. An explosion rattled the east wing of the estate. Screams echoed down the hallways. Elena ran from the kitchen, coughing from the smoke. Guards rushed past her with guns drawn. Panic spread like wildfire. Luca appeared through the chaos, furious, commanding, alive. Get her to safety, he barked. 2 guards grabbed her arms, pulling her away, but she struggled. Luca, what's happening? Rival attack, he shouted over the noise. Go! Ibri, she was dragged toward the basement shelter. But just before the door closed, she caught his eyes. Intense, burning, promising. I'll find you, he said. Hours passed like years. Gunfire, shouting, silence, then shouting again. The house shook, dust fell from the ceiling. She sat against the cold wall, knees pressed to her chest, trembling. She'd known his world was dangerous, but living it was different. Then a muffled explosion above, screams, then silence. The door swung open. A guard stumbled in, bleeding. He's been taken, he gasped. Who? She whispered. Luca. The world tilted, her heart froze. No, Abri, the decision Abri, she didn't think. She just moved, past the guard, up the stairs, through the smoke-filled halls. She found his office wrecked, papers scattered, glass shattered, and on the floor, the photo frame he kept of his late mother cracked. They took him, a trembling soldier told her. Rivals, black vans, north docks. Abri, she should have stayed hidden. She should have run. Instead, she grabbed the keys to one of the cars. For the first time in her life, Elena didn't let fear decide for her. I'm going after him. Abri, the docks were cold and quiet. Fog rolled over the water like a living thing. She crouched behind crates, watching armed men drag Luca into a warehouse. His hands were tied, blood on his lip, but his eyes burned like fire. They didn't know she was there. She slipped inside through a side door, heart pounding. Her mind screamed at her to turn back, but her heart had already chosen. The rescue brought her inside. The air stank of gasoline and betrayal. A rival boss stood over Luca, smirking. The great Luca Romano. So easy to break when you fall for a girl. Luca glared. Leave her out of this. Oh, but she's the reason you're here, the man taunted. Love makes men weak. Elena's hands clenched. Love, the word echoed. She spotted a guard's gun leaning on a crate. In one reckless motion she grabbed it, aimed with shaking hands, and fired into the ceiling. Bang! Everyone turned. Step away from him, she screamed. Her voice trembled but didn't break. She stood in that doorway, just a maid with no training, no plan. But something about the fire in her eyes made men pause. Luca's eyes widened when he saw her. Elena, what are you doing? He's saving you, she whispered. A standoff. Men with guns, one girl with nothing but courage. Luca seized the distraction. He knocked one guard backward, disarmed another, and chaos exploded. Elena ducked as bullets flew. Luca reached her in seconds, grabbing her hand. When this is over, he growled, I'm never letting you out of my sight again. Together, they ran. They fought. They survived. The confession broke. Hours later, after the smoke cleared, they found themselves in a quiet corner of the warehouse. Her dress was torn, his shirt blood-stained. Both were breathing hard, adrenaline still burning. You could have died, he said, voice hoarse. So could you, she shot back. Elena, no, she said firmly. You always act like you're untouchable, like love makes you weak. But look at us, Luca. We're alive because we didn't give up on each other. He stared at her, chest rising and falling. Something cracked inside him, that wall he built years ago. I don't deserve you, he whispered. She stepped closer. Maybe not, but I choose you anyway. His breath hitched. For a man who commanded armies, he suddenly looked so vulnerable. I told myself I'd never love again, he confessed. That love was a trap. But with you, it's the only thing that feels real. She smiled through tears, then stopped fighting it. He cupped her face gently, their foreheads touched, and in that quiet corner, surrounded by chaos they'd survived, he finally let himself fall. Their lips met, not rushed, not reckless, but deep, honest, and full of everything they'd held back. The new beginning broke her. Weeks later, the mansion was rebuilt. Guards returned to their posts. Life, in its strange way, moved on. But something fundamental had changed. Elena no longer cleaned floors in silence. She walked the halls like someone who belonged, because she did. Luca didn't hide in his office anymore. He laughed more, slept better, and every morning his eyes searched for her first. The Mafia world didn't soften. Enemies still lurked, power still ruled. But now, love wasn't a weakness. It was his strength. One night, standing on that same balcony where everything began, Luca took her hand. Elena, he said quietly, I never believed in love. Until you walked into my life. Blurry tears filled her eyes. And now? She asked. He smiled, the kind of smile he'd never shown anyone else. Now, I'd burn the world before I let anyone take you away. She laughed softly. That's a very Luca thing to say, because it's true. He pulled her close. The city lights below, the stars above, two souls who weren't supposed to find each other, and yet did. And somewhere in that quiet night, love didn't ask for permission. It simply stayed.